other questions? Yes?
Karen Foley, Town Clerk in Phillipston. I'm a little confused because, you know, we have our town census, and a student that's a college student will put that they live in their hometown because they're registered to vote there. So now we do a town census. They're counted as living in Phillipston, but they go to school at UMass, and you're going to count them as living in Amherst because that's where they are most of the time. Aren't they going to be confused, and are people going to be double counted, and do you have a way that you're going to cross-count these checks and balances so that students aren't counted twice and living in two different communities?
Well, let me start off. This is somewhat similar to one of the earlier questions we had. There are two different standards. The annual listing, as you know, takes account of everybody who's in the community. It includes those who are registered to vote and those who are not registered to vote. The federal definition is broader. Remember also that, and because of our laws here in Massachusetts and the way they've been interpreted through the years, it's ironic we're here in Worcester where much of the litigation that led to this interpretation began, that a student can in fact decide to register and vote here even if they have roots in another community. Most choose not to. Only in the presidential election do we see a big influx of student voters for the most part. There's two different standards. The standard for the local participation is one thing. The federal one is much broader, and it's not just students. The federal definition, because it's an effort to capture the overall picture of the country, says that wherever you spend most of your time, where you sleep the most, as of April 1st, that date being a critical date, that's the trigger for responding to the census. So, for instance, there are states in other parts of the country, in the South in particular, where there are large military installations. They would count all of that military personnel, even folks who clearly have affiliations with other states, as residents of that southern state. So there is a rough fairness in this approximation. As you all know, because you make rules and live by rules all the time, the rules often end up with some curious results. But the rules in this case for the federal census are quite clear. The students should be counted on the federal census if they're here on April 1st and if they've spent most of the year here. The confusion point you're making is as to whether they're residents. They may be a resident without being a voter. They may, as you point out, choose to be a resident picked up on your annual listing as living in apartment 6 in this particular building, but never pursue their right to vote here because they're registered to vote in their home state where they came from. This does not automatically register them, as you know. I'm less concerned about, I think the point you're making about confusion in the mind of the student is well taken. I'm less concerned about official confusion because I think we can distinguish the difference between the two. We're not going to automatically bring all those people in as voters, and I'm going to suggest to you, certainly at the local level, they're not likely to want to come in as voters for the most part. But I think it gets back to the point that was made by one of the earlier questions, which is it falls on us at the state level and the local level, and us particularly at the state level, to assist you at the local level to distinguish when your annual listing goes out why that's important and who should fill that in, and then to try to clarify the message perhaps to the school administrators when the federal census goes out. Fortunately, as you can see from the form, the federal census is rather distinct. It has a logo. It says Census 2010. It's somewhat distinctive from the local form that you're filling out. I guess the question which we'll have to ponder as we think about this problem approaching next year's annual listing is whether we should statewide put some sort of a notice or a decal or explanation on there that would help you and provide some sort of an insert to you perhaps to include with your annual listing mailing that would clarify this question so that you won't be overwhelmed by questions and that it won't adversely impact your local annual listing.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.